Happy Civic Holiday to all our fellow Ontarians, and Happy Heritage Day, Happy Saskatchewan Day, Happy Natal Day, Natal, Happy New Brunswick Day, and Happy British Columbia Day, as this holiday is known in other parts of Canada. I don't know if this is a holiday in other countries, but if it is, then happy whatever day to all you too. And what better way to celebrate some time off right in the middle of the summer than to read an ad to promote our sponsor? Well, there are probably plenty of better ways to celebrate, but we certainly don't mind talking about Sparkplug Coffee. They offer decaf and half calf, along with regular dollops of calf, amongst your bag of the freshest, fairly traded premium Arabica beans in Canada. If you like a variety of blends and roasts, when you order your coffee online, Sparkplug has a slew of options. They also provide rotating seasonal blends, and they deliver within a week whatever ends up making it into your order sheet to anyone who lives in the continental United States and naturally all parts of Canada. And while we're doing all this holiday celebrating, I can suggest you do something else, and that's set up a membership in Sparkplug's Autopilot Coffee Club. You get perks and all kinds of deals, plus you will save money each and every time you order. You can even quit or just pause your membership without going through a lot of hoopla. And you can customize to get your orders when it suits what's going on in your life. Standard and stifling coffee of the month club? No way, Jose. The website is sparkplug.coffee/HYES. You'll save 20% when you use our HYES promo code, one time only, and that even gets us a little piece of the monetary action, just a little slice for Bev and I. It's sparkplug.coffee, ladies and gents. Well, it's time to get into our latest listicle. Bev, I am not permitted to do that until you cue the maestro.
And action! Have you ever seen?
Presents a special show for episode number 603. This is a listicle where we'll give you some hot takes about movies and movie makers. We each have 5 opinions that just might be controversial or maddening, or even, in the opinions of some of our listeners, flat out wrong. Feel free to email or tweet us and set us straight, but let's not forget that opinions are like taints. Everybody's got one. I know the expression's something else, but let's try to keep it PG today. And we're willing to take the chance that people will scream at their phones in the next half hour or so because listicles get more downloads than typical movie reviews do. And they're pretty easy to put together, too. Anyway, who are we? I'm Ryan. I will watch any shark or baseball movie, Ellis. And this is my wife, who won't watch just any old shark or baseball movie, Bev.
That's me.
My first not-so-hot take. People probably know that about me, that I love the sharks and the baseball movies. I should also tell you that the other thing we'll do at the end of the podcast today is to give a very brief synopsis of some of the flicks we've seen on the big screen the past few weeks. We don't have any mailbag questions this time like we did, what was that, last month? Anyway, we took advantage of having time on our vacation to see things like Thelma, Kinds of Kindness, Maxine, and Longlegs. So we'll chat about each and every one of them later on in the show, just to fill this out a little bit. But first, let's get to the hot takes. Maybe some of these will be a repeat of things we've said about these films or filmmakers in previous episodes. I know that will be, at least in one of my cases, if not 2 or 3. But here are our 5 points of view bunched together in one handy little package. I'll go first. And then Bev will have 1, then I'll have 2, then she'll have 2. Or number 2, that is. You know what I'm saying. My number 1 isn't something that's likely to bother anyone or get anyone's back up, but it's more of a, hey, I never thought of that before. And it's that Michael Keaton is one of the most unappreciated actors in Hollywood. Unappreciated? Him? Well, yes, Mike has played Batman 3 times. He's been in plenty of prestige films and Oscar winners. Yeah, he's been nominated for Best Actor. He's famous. I think he's pretty well liked in the biz, and I can only assume his bank account is enormous. The man can do comedy and drama equally well, and some of his best work has come in his later years. Think of Birdman, Spotlight, and I know you agree with this one, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
I thought you were going to say The Founder, another excellent recent performance.
Hold on a second.
Oh.
But those are proof right there, those 3 performances, and many others, of course, too. Those are 3 good ones, though. But I think despite all that, he's still unappreciated, or at least 2 of his movies are. Most people wouldn't say that The Paper or The Founder are as good as Beetlejuice, or Batman or Birdman, but I am saying that. I fell in love with The Paper back when I was working for my college newspaper, and I even had the same job Keaton does in the film, which is the news editor. They call it the Metro editor, but same job. The film is funny, it's exciting, it's got a wonderful cast, and even though The Satellite was just a college newspaper run by people who were barely in their 20s, my paper, I can tell you from experience that a lot of what's in Ron Howard's movie is very authentic. I especially love when Keaton loses it when he's on the phone with a fellow newspaperman from whom he stole a story. I could quote the whole F-bomb-filled rant, but I won't, because maybe we'll keep this episode clean. This film, in fact, was enough of a hit with me that it made my top 10 list in 1994 over things like Dumb and Dumber, True Lies, and Clerks. I like them all a lot too, but this was number 9 on that list, and I had those in the honorable mentions category. As for The Founder, there's just something about that one that keeps bringing me back to it, even though it flew under the radar back at the end of 2016. Although as good as Keaton is in it, my real love is for Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch as the McDonald brothers. Those two guys are an excellent team. They should make another movie together. Maybe they have. I don't know.
It was a great film.
Great brothers in that movie. Okay, maybe the story of the founder isn't 100% accurate. Name a biopic that is. But I find it incredibly entertaining and informative. The scene on a tennis court where the brothers work out how to serve more customers faster is one of my favorite procedural scenes in any movie ever. So yeah, people love and respect Mikey Keats, but those are two of his movies that don't get nearly enough credit, and they're just as rewatchable as anything else he's ever been in, and that's a great list.
Hard agree with that hot take. It's an easy thing to say simply because you could never truly appreciate Michael Keaton enough. He has just been one of our greatest movie stars for years. There was a little lull there where he didn't seem to be starring in a lot of films.
Not high profile anyway.
Not high profile, yeah, you're right. We can all collectively grieve the work he would have done had Hollywood not shunted him aside for some fresh new face or whatever happened there. I absolutely love him.
Your first hot take is?
My first hot take is also not my most steaming hot take, so I'll start with just like yours. Probably lots of people agree with this too. To all the auteur purists out there, this might be upsetting. My hot take is that 9 times out of 10, and maybe even more than that, the theatrical release of any film is better than the director's cut. Okay. There are exceptions. You really preferred the Snyder cut of Justice League,
yes.
As many people did. I'm sure someone out there could write a dissertation on all the different versions of Blade Runner, but the vast majority of the time, when I see a director's cut, it's either just the scenes that the director couldn't bear to cut and put back in the film that spoils the pacing or indulges in a B story that really didn't need elaborating. It's just a scene that they love too much, even if it didn't really ultimately belong in the film. Or it's a deleted scene that's just put back in there as a marketing gimmick. So I think on one hand, we over-vilify studio executives. Studio notes get such a bad rap because we always remember the horror stories about movies that turned out great in the end. Like we just covered The Iron Giant. Studio told Brad Bird to set that movie in the present and give it a hip-hop soundtrack. And he fought back and he won. We're all grateful that movie is absolutely perfect the way it is. But then sometimes studio executives can be the heroes. A great example, you have Paul Feig running the Marvelverse, and say what you want about Marvel films, they have such a consistent tone
Paul Feig,
and
you mean
story.
Kevin Feige.
Oh my god, I do that all the time. Kevin Feige, how embarrassing. Shame on me. Obviously not the biggest MCU fan myself, but I always respect the way Feige has kept such a consistent tone and story and a proper canon in those films compared to the way Kathleen Kennedy fumbled Star Wars, particularly in the newest trilogy. That's a bit of an aside, just to defend studio execs, I guess. But then studio execs also gave us many bad director's cuts, and I say that because I think in the early aughts, when home media was a huge income stream for studios, suddenly the director's cut became a marketing tool. I never met one person who prefers the special editions of the original Star Wars trilogy, but that made a fortune on pre-existing films. Another great example is the Apocalypse Now Redux. It's pretty hard to defend as a creative choice, no matter how much you love Coppola, no matter how much you love that film, no matter how much you can't get enough of Apocalypse Now. But it was a cheap way to release an old property like a new film and cash in all over again. And it made money in the theaters, it made money in home media. Of course, the decade where every single comedy had to have a director's cut release on DVD. I bet studios eventually just started asking projects to write in extra raunchy throwaway scenes that they could add into the home media and call it the unrated version. Yes. And I'm pressed to think of one film where the extra scenes are a true value add.
I've already agreed a few times during your rant there with most of what you said, but I'm going to add one more thing. The reviled Harvey Weinstein is the one who said to Damon and Affleck about Good Will Hunting, their breakout screenplay, get rid of all the CIA stuff you've got in this. It was going to be a thriller.
Right.
And look at how successful the movie was as just a regular movie about people.
Same with American Beauty. That was going to be a courtroom drama.
Yes.
About Janie and, what's his name? Ricky. Yeah, they were going to be accused of the murder.
Right.
Somebody along the line was like, take all that out. This is a story about a family.
My number 2 hot take won't be as positive as what I just said about Mr. Keaton, so this might make some people, shall we say, hot on my hot take. I say that method acting is one of the most overrated and self-indulgent crocks of crap I've ever heard of. There are great stories about what Brando and Dean and Newman and Streep and Hoffman and De Niro and Pacino put themselves through to develop a character, but they didn't seem like they were maniacs about it. The next generation of method actors just come across as people who'd rather be weird and obnoxious than actually be good in the movie. Did I annoy everybody I worked with? Well, then success. Even if the movie isn't a success.
Name names, please.
I'm about to.
Okay.
It isn't about serving the character of the film. It's about serving their own ego. Olivier said to Hoffman back in the 70s, maybe you should try acting. Well, same goes with these guys, maybe. As good as he is, and yes, I like most of his films, but I maintain that Daniel Day-Lewis isn't nearly as talented as people think he is if he has to stay in character all the time. You have to eat dinner in your Bill the Butcher costume and accent and behave like the guy day and night, or you'll lose the character that easily? God, Dan, get over yourself. And I ask, are Day-Lewis's performances that much better than someone like Billy Bob Thornton or Robin Williams, who screwed around? Well, Williams did screw around. He's, of course, long dead. But they screw around before they hear action, then they go right into character. I've seen making-ofs with Billy Bob doing the Sling Blade voice in a movie that had nothing to do with Sling Blade. Action, right into character. That takes talent. Not this, I've got to be the character for 8 weeks straight. However you get the character down and do a good job for your director is however you do it. And Streep's the one that said at one point, it's a method, it's not the method. There are ways of doing even the method. Different ways, I mean. But it clearly bugs me immensely that a guy like Day-Lewis or Jared Leto get the kinds of raves they do for their self-indulgent nonsense. Guys, breaking news, you're making believe. Making believe. You're not a 19th century oil baron, Dan. You're an actor. You're not a psychotic supervillain whose enemy is a billionaire dresses up like a bat, Jared. You're an actor. So go ahead and get even a very powerful man like Steven Spielberg to call his 21st century movie star Mr. President while making Lincoln. But I think that stuff is so phony. Just shut up and pretend, because that's exactly what you are doing.
You forgot to mention Shia LaBeouf, who might be the worst one of all of them.
Right.
Crazy stories.
But maybe more talented than even Day-Lewis and Leto. That guy is good, as much of a pain in the rear as he is.
In the case of Jared Leto and Shia LaBeouf, talented as they may be, I think they use acting as an excuse to be jerks. Okay. I think they're bad people.
Number 2 hot take for you.
Everyone complains up and down about sequels and remakes and never seeing anything original in their movie theater anymore. But if everyone hates sequels and remakes, who's going to see all these sequels and remakes? Mm-hmm. Because just the other day, you and I were going through the top 10 of 2024 releases so far, and all 10 films were based on existing properties.
I think maybe one wasn't.
It depends on what you consider an existing property, like Godzilla Kong. Is that a sequel?
That.
You counted that? Okay. Inside Out 2, Dune Part 2, Quiet Place Day 1, Kung Fu Panda Part 4. All of them were part of some franchise. But my hot take is that sequels and remakes are fine. Often, they're very good.
We loved Inside Out 2.
I loved Dune Part 2. I think it's better than Part 1. Somebody's going to see these movies. Just admit that if you're more likely to buy a ticket for Despicable Me than If, then you're part of the problem. And I think we all are, no matter how much we like original films. We like great original films, but there is a kind of a value add to walking into a movie and already knowing what to expect, already being familiar with the tone, already caring about the characters, so you can skip ahead past that first act of getting to know characters. I know I'm guilty of this too. I like knowing what to expect, especially when a movie ticket is $16. And studies show that we enjoy predictable movies more. Part of the reason why trailers will give the whole plot away. Studies show you enjoy the movie more when you know what's coming. Probably part of the reason we rewatch things all the time.
Okay.
And I would add there are lots of truly great movies that are sequels or remakes. You really want to argue that Denis Villeneuve should have left Dune alone and should have just let the 80s version, the David Lynch version, stand? Or that The Dark Knight didn't bring anything new to cinema? I'm sure that all of our listeners could think of great examples. And of course, I'm not coming out against original films, but there's this absurd argument that some of Hollywood's problems come from this lack of creativity because it keeps churning out the same thing over and over. But those are the successful films. There's a balance to be found here, but it's a really facile argument to blame studios for giving audiences what they obviously want to see. And of course, I will remind everyone, you are free to exercise your right to simply not see these movies. Like, I personally hate that Disney keeps churning out all these live-action remakes of classic animated films.
Agreed.
So I don't watch them. But they make a fortune, so I guess my opinion is really just a preference, and that's fine.
Well, I can respond to you with my next point. We did not compare notes as to what our 5 would be, or the order of them, obviously, either. But my next one, coincidentally, is really playing up that same thing, agreeing with you. Or maybe it's not agreeing with you, but anyway, let me just get to it.
All right. Let's hear it.
So number 3 for me is something I just recently thought about. And from what I heard, Oz Perkins, who directed Longlegs, won't agree with this. But while there are always going to be examples of remakes that just flat out stink, a lot of horror remakes are superior to the original, if not vastly superior. By the way, speaking of horror, coincidentally, Bev and I are both wearing orange shirts right now. We're in our Halloween outfits already.
We just can't wait for October.
This goes up August the 1st. We're still months away from Halloween. Think of the obvious horror remakes that are great, like The Fly, the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the 2020 version of The Invisible Man. The Fly, especially, is way better than the Vincent Price original. But here's a way to make some enemies. What about Dawn of the Dead? People can have George Romero's original as landmark as it was. I've seen it a few times, and that's probably enough. I like Zack Snyder's 2004 version with the running zombies. I've certainly seen it more than I've seen Romero's. Same goes for Romero's The Crazies from the 70s, which is good, but I like Breck Eisner's take in 2010 on the story even more. I'd also say that even though Romero's Night of the Living Dead is one of my favorite movies, period, and something I've seen probably 6 or maybe even 8 times, Tom Savini's 1990 redo is pretty good too, and the actors are certainly better than they are in Romero's 1968 flick. So I like Romero's better in this case, but it's not as big a gap as you might think. And what about The Evil Dead? Sam Raimi's 80s original is fun and helped make Bruce Campbell a B-lister, but Fede Alvarez, I think it's Fede Alvarez's, that's his name, 2013 blood-soaked and more horrifying take was even better. The performances were certainly far better in Alvarez's movie. Side note, after her work in Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, why isn't Jane Levy a star? Anyway, let's really get people to yell right now as I say that two of the very best examples of horror remakes that outdo the originals are, sorry Wes Craven fans, The Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes. Just like the newer Evil Dead, the acting is so much better in the remakes, and some of the brutal scenes from the newer versions have stayed with me more than anything that's in the originals. Dennis Iliadis, I guess, directed the 2009 Last House remake, and Alexander Aja directed the 2006 version of The Hills Have Eyes, which I watched again on Disney Plus a few days ago. The siege in the camper when the hill people rape Claire from Lost, and kill 2 other members of the family and take the baby, all while they've set Ted Levine on fire and he's burning alive. Wow, that is a fantastic horror scene. I'd say that the directors of these 2 newer versions and their teams just flat out outdid the primitive and sloppier Craven ones from the 70s. How could you say that? Oz Perkins certainly wouldn't agree with me on that.
Horror fans value creativity and like new ideas more than the average movie fan, and remakes tend to put a polish on someone else's idea, so maybe that's why there's animosity towards it.
So I guess now I can rebut your thing about director's cuts. Yeah, some of them are better, and I only know Close Encounters and the Lord of the Rings movies from the director's cuts. Not only, but mostly know them from the director's cuts. So I prefer those, and you mentioned Blade Runner. Apocalypse Now I saw on the big screen in 2001, the Redux version. I'm glad I saw it, but I don't like that version better. So I agree with your basic point, but there are definitely exceptions to that rule.
There's exceptions to every rule. All right, so I'm going to take a massive left turn and talk about a kid's movie, and I'm going to take a left turn and just talk about one specific movie here. So here's my hot take. The Little Mermaid is not that sexist. The whole Ariel gave up her voice for a man thing is not a fair read of that movie. Ariel, from the beginning of the film, before she knows Eric exists, without any romantic intentions whatsoever, always wants to be a human. She wants to be where the people are. And the movie is pretty explicitly against Ariel giving up her voice. One might say it's a lesson to girls to not give up their voices or to believe villains who ask for your agency in exchange for a quick and easy path to your desires. The climax of the movie, the happy ending, is when Ariel gets her voice back. Eric falls in love with her because she's brave and she rescues him. The only thing he remembers about her is her voice, just because he's drowning and messed up. So that's the connection. In fact, her inability to express herself and to communicate is a barrier to him falling in love with her, even though she's beautiful, presumably very docile is what everybody implies about her, and voiceless. That's supposed to be the outrageous thing, but plot-wise, that doesn't make any sense. Romance is a big part of almost every Disney animated film because romance is delightful. But Eric is a narrative way of getting a ticking clock. Ariel has to get Eric to fall in love with her or she turns into one of Ursula's sea ghouls. But there's so much more to her transformative story than that particular plot point. And speaking of Ursula, she is everyone's favorite character in the film. She is everyone's favorite Disney villain. She's a big, fat, loud broad. She's modeled after a drag queen. And that is real. She was modeled after Divine. And she rules. You can't tell me that's not a little bit feminist. Recently, I was listening to this interview with this comic named Estelle Fallick. She called The Little Mermaid a trans fable, and I love that read. Ariel doesn't really feel like she belongs in the body she's born in. She's aggressively dismissed by her family, and She has to make this really compromising choice that puts her in danger in order to become her true self. But her desire to be her true self is so very strong that she gives up something that important to her. So the happy ending comes when she has her family and her voice and her legs. So that gives her the opportunity to be safely herself. And I think that's a much, not just a lovelier read of that film, but a more accurate read. People who want to complain about that movie being sexist, Beauty and the Beast, I will tear to pieces. That movie is absolutely messed up and encourages Belle to stay with an outright violent abuser who's selfish and destructive. But Little Mermaid, give it another chance.
Just don't make her black.
Oh,
how dare you?
Well, I already said I will never watch the remakes because I just don't want to. No shade on people who like them, but I am fully in support of making Ariel black.
The fictional character can't be black.
So stupid.
Mermaid. If you're going to do it again, make her black. Make it different. That's a good thing. I just saw Book of Clarence. They're black mostly in that movie, and they're Jesus-era characters. At least it was something different. I like what they tried to do in that movie. Other thing I'll say about Little Mermaid is someone who doesn't really know that much about it. I've seen it twice. I don't really care. It's not one of my favorite Disney movies. Oh my God, it's so sexist. Yeah, it's, 35 years old, so.
I still say it's not only not sexist, it might have even been progressive from the time it came out.
What age as well?
I'm disagreeing with that take at all altogether.
My fourth hot take is not controversial, but I hope it's enlightening to people. And that is that actors playing members of a band and the people watching them perform might be as good a case of storytelling as it gets. Think of the scene at the talent show in That Thing You Do, the Oneidas. Tom Everett Scott plays drums at a fast pace, which makes Jonathan Skitch, Jimmy in the movie, makes him mad. He wrote what he wanted to be a lovesick ballad, so a slow tune. But even he gets what's going on enough, when the people are into it, that he sings it as a pop song. He's still mad later on, but he does get into it. And the band easily wins the contest. Steve Zahn gets to be funny like he so often does throughout that movie. Hey, what's going on here? This is all right. You're a lucky man. And we see the pure joy on Tom Everett Scott's face when Zahn says that to him. But there's also the way Giovanni Ribisi, I'm forgetting the bass player, sorry, Ethan Embry. But there's also the way Giovanni Ribisi and Liv Tyler play the scene. Ribisi was the original drummer, but he broke his arm doing something stupid, which meant the band had to recruit Tom Everett Scott. But Ribisi comes to watch the show anyway. When he says, "Oh, come on, that's too fast." I don't know if I said that right. That's too fast. I can't do it. It's his voice. That's my favorite line reading of his entire career. I'm not the biggest fan of Ribisi. I love that line reading. And then the guy bumps his arm and it's broken. And Liv Tyler, she's so lovely and sweet throughout the movie. But the smile on her face when she sees how much people love the song is maybe the greatest thing she's ever done in a movie. That 1 second, that just one look. And to top it all off, you've got Charlize Theron, who's Tom Everett Scott's date, not even noticing or caring how well this is going because she's just that much of a vain jerk. Great storytelling. And then there's the case of when the band in School of Rock play their big song at the end of that movie. Look at all that happens. We see the parents' reaction to how good their 10-year-old kids are. My favorite is when Tamika's parents are overjoyed that their shy, overweight, black daughter has the courage to come out to the middle of the stage and sing a solo. And the kids are great performers. So is Jack Black, whose arc, really in the end, ends up being that when he does a stage dive, they catch him, versus in the beginning of the movie when he dives out, nobody catches him and he hits the ground hard. He really breaks his hip or something. Plus, there are little wrinkles in this scene, like nerdy Mike White getting into the performance, and also the kid who designs the graphics and the lighting is so good at it that the professional who's up there with him is looking over his shoulder later on during the song, almost like, oh, I may learn from this kid. What I've learned is having a band play a song in a movie is an incredible way to tell many stories all at once.
Can't disagree. Those are two great scenes.
Not a hot take?
Not the hottest take.
But maybe it's a, oh yeah. Your number 4 hot take.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to talking about studios again. And this is a lukewarm take, kind of like yours, because I'm saving my spiciest one for last. So, when we talk about box office and the budget of films, we should include talking about the money it makes from home media or the money it spends on its promo budget. When you think about it, it's weird that we're privy to the amount of information we are privy to when we talk about budgets and box office numbers. We find out a book is a bestseller, we never know exactly how much Random House made on a particular title. Same with music and TV. There's a lot of mystery there. We know when something's a hit, but we never really know the ins and outs of how much somebody's making on it.
It was a hit.
It was a hit. But it's even weirder that box office numbers are there, but they just tell this fraction of the story anyway. Everyone likes to talk about how Shawshank was a flop. But how much did the studio make? Even before home media, it was on cable TV every weekend for like 10 years. Every Sunday. And how much are they still making on home media and streaming? Can't we just adjust our perception of a film to reflect the different ways that it can find financial success? If TV, streaming, and home media was meaningless, there would be no straight to VOD movies, right? Or straight to DVD movies or VHS movies that there always have been. On that note, there's often this dishonesty when a film talks about their budget. Marvel loves to describe their films as costing $500 million, but how much of that? Right? No, exactly. How much of that is inflated? They'll put something in the budget that's like rent on a studio that they own. We know they're cooking the books, right? Somewhere out there's a real ledger that calculates what it actually costs to make these films. And saying it costs you $500 million is both good for taxes, it's also good for publicity.
And skimming.
Oh, definitely skimming. I read somewhere they were like, the reason movies cost $500 million instead of $50 million is it's a lot easier to steal from a $500 million budget.
Movies don't cost that much, but if you're really inflating there.
$500 million?
No movies ever cost $500 million, I don't think. Maybe
Titanic did.
I don't think so. To make in 1996 or so when they made it.
Yeah, it was like a huge part of the story of that film. Everybody thought it was going to be such a massive flop. Well, no movie actually cost $500 million. Anyways, I think you get my point. Speaking of budgets, publicity, those numbers don't ever reflect what a studio spends on the promotion budget. This can be a really big deal for smaller films that can easily double their budget when marketing is accounted for. Everyone who writes, talks about movies, they all know that these numbers are at best incomplete and at worst heavily manipulated, but we run with it anyways and talk about it like it really reflects the financing and the economics of filmmaking.
It's funny too, like you say, that we even know this at all when we don't about so many other businesses.
Yeah.
That's what people sometimes forget, is that a budget you might hear, it cost $150 million to make this, and it made $210, so isn't that profitable? Well, the print and advertising, the P&A, is almost always a lot of money. Sometimes it's as much as the budget of the filmmaking process was, so then, no, you're not making money.
Yeah. So either we talk about it honestly, or we just stop taking this at face value.
True. Well, look at the streaming, too, with Apple Plus especially. They've put so much money into some of their recent productions. Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon. They gave so much money to Scorsese and Scott and some other people to make these films, and then they didn't come close to making it back in the theatrical window that they both got, but they got prestigious filmmakers on their service. And what does that mean? Well, they don't really ever tell us that. That's a factor, too. All right, my number 5 hot take. I had trouble finding a fifth one, and we're going to talk about this next week anyway when we review Body Heat, but here it is. You definitely said this in a previous episode, too, maybe Fatal Attraction. But whatever happened to sex thrillers? I know why they don't make them much anymore, and if they do, it goes straight to streaming. Streaming again. They're not getting a big theatrical push almost ever anymore. And studios always try to avoid an R rating because you're shutting out the kids from seeing your movie, at least legally. They might sneak in. They can't buy a ticket. And they drive the theatrical business. Plus, it isn't easy to get an established actress to play a raunchy sex scene, or I guess even some actors to do that, but women especially if you want to show any skin. Look at the number of people that were talked about to play Catherine in Basic Instinct. We talked about that a couple years ago when we covered that film. They settled on the right person in Sharon Stone, and she's awesome in the entire film. But they did have to settle for Stone because Michelle Pfeiffer and Demi Moore and many others weren't going to do what the lesser-known actress was willing to do. But still, there should be a market for this kind of project today because, partly at least, there was over 30 years ago. People are still horny. There are more people on the planet than ever. And Basic Instinct did well. Fatal Attraction was huge and was nominated for all kinds of Oscars. Body Heat put its 2 stars and the director on the map. Most of us complain that all we get are blockbusters, comic book films, and sequels. You already talked about that. I didn't know you were going to. But look at what we're about to talk about in a few minutes when we review Thelma, Kinds of Kindness, and Longlegs. They're all, I think, original concepts, and they're intended for adults. They're not sex movies. I'm just saying they're intended for grown-ups. None of them were given big budgets, but they all have done pretty well at the box office. Longlegs especially has done very well, considering they were released in the height of the summer movie season. So if there's a market for those films this year, then some of the same viewers might enjoy seeing good-looking people steam it up in the sheets. And to make people come back and see it again or tell their friends to go see it, you hire a talented writer to give them a great mystery to solve too. Or turn one of them into a psycho, like in Fatal Attraction. Sure, Bev and I can watch 80s and 90s era Michael Douglas risk his life as he beds various women as often as we want because we have all those movies on DVD, Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, Body Heat, and so on. But how about giving us something new? There are 8 trillion actors in Hollywood, and we get more movies than ever every single year. Just once in a while, let's see 2 people raw dogging while we hope that when they're done with that, we get to enjoy a good story. And that will sell, darn it!
It's beyond even not wanting to make movies R-rated. They're so chaste that you rarely see a kiss in movies anymore.
You've said this before about superhero movies. All these guys look like this, and yet they never seem to want to do it with a woman or a guy. I've heard Will Smith has rarely kissed women in his movies. I don't think The Rock ever has. Or maybe that joke kiss with Karen Gillan in, what was it, the Jungle?
Jumanji.
Jumanji, that's it. Look at the way they look, and they... Anyway.
Yeah. They're sexy but sexless.
Yes.
I'm sure that there's somebody out there saying, oh, it's because of woke, but I bet you any money it's because of international sales and them wanting to market the film in literally any place they can, even a country that would resist any acknowledgement of sex whatsoever.
Or mixed race couples.
Yes, yeah,
that's a big deal, even
too.
Here, but certainly overseas. I guess it would be even a bigger deal.
Okay, are you ready for the hottest take there is?
Do it, number 5.
It's the first one I thought of, but I've saved it for last.
You went and saved the best for last.
Movie popcorn is bad, actually. And I don't mean that movie popcorn is not good enough to reflect its ridiculously inflated price. I mean that it sucks. It's, first of all, the cheapest possible snack. It's like what you would feed animals.
A friend of mine long ago worked in movie theaters. We're talking 30 years ago, but still, he said that stuff costs nothing.
Nothing. Corn is animal feed. It's one of the cheapest food products there is. Popcorn, as a food, delicious. But movie popcorn is the worst version of popcorn. It's way oversalted. The fake butter flavor they put on it doesn't taste good. And the real butter is nasty. The popcorn, you know they're making it right there somehow. It still is always stale, even though we see them make it right in front of us. So I say, if you like movie popcorn, I think what you like is the nostalgia of how much fun it was to go to the movies as a kid. The smell rules. Walking to a movie theater and smelling popcorn is rad. But the disappointment of what it tastes like when you spend like $10 for a small bag of it is massive. I have to be hungry to cave in and settle for movie theater popcorn.
When we went back to the movies in 2021, I guess it was, to see Dune. It was 2021, wasn't it?
That's right.
That was our first movie in over a year and a half. I definitely wanted theater popcorn, and I didn't love it that much either. I think I like it a little bit more than you. And we had it again recently because we wanted a snack, and it was our vacation. We spent a little more money than we would normally on movies and popcorn.
All these rationalizations. It's okay. You wanted popcorn. You bought popcorn.
But you're right. Like everything else I've said about movies in the past, I didn't go on that rant. I've made that rant before about why I don't want to go to the movies as much as I used to, although I did a lot in July with you. But it's partly because of the cost of everything, including how much it costs to eat this okay snack.
Yeah, we have a long history of sneaking our own snacks into movies.
All right. Interesting way to end the hot takes. That was the 10 of them. Let's spend 4 or 5 minutes, or maybe less, doing very quick reviews of the films we saw on the big screen in July. Thelma was funny and sweet. June Squibb and Richard Roundtree in a team-up movie? Who knew? We laughed a lot over the course of 90 minutes. I'd highly recommend seeing that, and I guess at this point, it's probably in early August when this goes up, will be a streaming option now.
I agree. Totally delightful, and also would make a perfect airplane movie.
Sure, yeah. I didn't love Kinds of Kindness, but I did find it fascinating, most of the time. And the actors sure don't phone it in. Jesse Plemons is such a talent, and the more Emma Stone works with Yorgos Lanthimos, the more I believe she's capable of nearly anything. Still, I don't love this or any of Yorgos' films, other than The Favorite, the way that you do.
Not only did I love Kinds of Kindness way more than you did, I liked it better than Poor Things. It's definitely in the running for my favorite movie of the year so far.
Oh.
And anyone who is a Lanthimos fan, and you too have to be a Lanthimos fan to enjoy this movie, I would say it's a true return to form to the movies he was making, like The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer. If that's the Yorgos Lanthimos that you like, you're going to love Kinds of Kindness.
Surprisingly little kindness in Kinds of Kindness.
Well, there's surprisingly little kindness in any Yorgos Lanthimos films,
but
except maybe Poor Things, which I find his most optimistic film, and maybe that's why I don't love it as much. I just love a bleak, cold-hearted, weird film like this, and it's funny, too.
At times. Maxine is the worst of the 3 in the X trilogy, but it's not a bad thriller. Mia Goth is a talented young woman, just like Jane Levy or Levy, whatever her name is. They're both very good, should have a better career than they even do. And if you like the other 2 flicks, so X and Pearl, you pretty much have to see Maxine, too. They do tie up some loose ends from the first film pretty effectively. So I didn't love it, but it's not bad. It's pretty solid. Definitely a good rental in the future for people.
I really like X and Pearl, but I don't love them the way some people love them, so maybe I went in with lower expectations for Maxine and I got exactly what I was expecting. It's a good film, it's fun, it makes some promises that it doesn't keep, and the story is missing some elegance to it. It's just not the most well-crafted story, but there's some very fun scenes, and Mia Goth is a star. She's a star! star. She's really kind of on like the Nicolas Cage track.
Okay.
Her weirdness is her biggest asset, and she knows exactly how to use it, and she knows exactly who to work with to take the best advantage of it. She's the one I'm most excited to see what she does next.
They take more advantage of it. Well, Ty West takes more advantage of that weirdness in the first two films, though. I don't think she gets to do that much great stuff in this movie compared to the other two.
That's the promise that they make and they don't keep.
Yeah. I liked Longlegs more than you did. It didn't scare me during the screening, and it didn't have any effect on me at bedtime the day we saw it, which has always been my measuring stick, or at least it used to be my measuring stick. But it gave me some chills here and there. I had to go to the bathroom. Maybe that's what it was, too. I didn't know what to take a whiz. Nick Cage, as always, goes for it, and the atmosphere is effective. We didn't love Micah Monroe. I liked her a little more than you. She's the star of It Follows as well, which is a great horror film. I want to see it again, though, Longlegs, that is, when it's available on streaming, when I know the twists and turns ahead of time, because I like to pick apart how Oz Perkins handled the story beats.
I was pretty disappointed, but I think I just had far too high expectations for this film. If I had gone in expecting something else, maybe I would have liked it more. I will give it credit, though, for being a really beautiful horror film. There are so many truly interesting shots in the movie that makes it well worth watching just for that alone. That guy has like a real knack for knowing where to put the camera and knowing how to just make a scene that could be just fine super interesting.
Anthony Perkins' son also.
Yeah.
And those were our 10 hot takes and some brief movie reviews of recent releases. Happy holidays, civic holiday here, Simcoe Day, for those who take the day off. Next week we'll be pretty deep into August, so what better time than the dog days to talk about a hot and sweaty movie and a full review again, not a listicle, starring William Hurt and Kathleen Turner in Larry Kasdan's directorial debut, Body Heat. The coming attractions trivia question for Body Heat. As good as William Hurt is in the film, Kathleen Turner was probably even better, and she became an overnight star. She went on to have an incredible decade in the 80s. She was in many hits, and her movies were almost always critically acclaimed, too. She's been in good things since, too, but the 80s? Wow, what a run that was for her. Still, and it was for Hurt for that matter, too, his own career that decade. Still, we've only reviewed one film that Turner was in before we get to Body Heat next week. What was it?
All right, so for the answer to that question, check out next week's podcast about Body Heat. You already know how to find us. Let me remind you to favorite or subscribe wherever you listen, which is also where you can find our archive of hundreds of episodes that are available for free. While you're there, leave us a rating and a review. That's a great way to support the podcast. We're both on Twitter. I'm at Bev Ellis Ellis, and Ryan is at MovieFiend51. You can also reach us by email, haveyoueverseenpodcast@gmail.com, and you can find our podcast on YouTube. Our channel is at HYES Ellis. And to enjoy freshly roasted premium coffee delivered straight to you in Canada and the US, please go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES, where you can enjoy a 20% discount.
Want to go get some popcorn?
Oh, if we make it at home, then yeah.
All right.
Hell yeah.
Done.
And cut.